right, so get ready because today we're diving deep into title splitting. And
Yeah.
you sent me a ton of info on this. Seems a bit technical, but I have a feeling once we get into it,
Oh,
we're going to
yeah.
see how profitable this can be.
Yeah, I think a lot of people miss this one, even people who've been investing in property for quite a while.
Okay, so let's start at the very beginning. For anybody just tuning in, can you just explain what title splitting is in a nutshell?
So basically, it's where you take a property and legally divide the ownership.
Okay.
So, it's like if you had a house and a granny flat,
Mm-hmm.
you would divide it so the house has one title and the granny flat has another.
Right, so we're essentially taking one big property and making two smaller ones, or even more than two sometimes,
Yeah, that's right.
that we can then sell or refinance independently.
Mhm.
Okay, but let's say I'm a seller and I've got this great property. Why wouldn't I just split the title myself before putting it on the market?
Well, I think a lot of sellers don't even realize this is a strategy. They're thinking about selling, not maximizing the price.
It's not really something that's common knowledge, is it? I
Yeah.
mean, I've been involved in real estate for a while, and I'm just learning about this now.
Exactly. And then even if they did know about it, they might think the legal process is too much hassle,
Yeah.
dealing with the land registry and solicitors, getting all the permissions.
It can seem scary, can it?
Yeah, a lot of people probably just think, I want to sell the property. I don't want to get a law degree.
Right, exactly. But thinking about that fear of the legalities, doesn't that create like a huge opportunity for investors who are willing to put in the time to figure it all out?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're prepared to do your research and figure out how it all works, you can find some amazing deals that everybody else is overlooking.
Okay, I'm starting to see the potential.
Yeah.
So what would you say are some of the main benefits for investors? What makes title splitting so appealing?
Well, one of the biggest things is that it gives you more flexibility.
Right.
You can sell some of the units and keep hold of others. You can even refinance individual units if you want to release equity.
Hmm.
So it's almost like you've got your own customized investment portfolio within just the one property.
Oh, I love the sound of that. You get the potential for higher returns,
Yeah,
but you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, right?
exactly. And it means you're mitigating risk.
Yeah.
Because you've diversified your holdings, even if one unit's not performing so well,
Right?
the others can make up for it.
It's a safer bet than just having a single income stream.
Definitely. And title splitting can actually boost your rental income as well because
Yeah.
you're dividing it into more units. So instead of renting out one big building to one tenant,
Mhm.
you're renting out lots of separate apartments, which often means a higher rate per square foot.
Okay, this is making a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So more units, more flexibility, less risk, and higher income.
Yeah.
It sounds too good to be true. But before we go any further, let's talk about the legal stuff. What are the crucial things we need to think about before we even consider splitting a title?
So the first thing is to check if you're actually allowed to split the title.
Right.
You need to see what the local zoning and planning regulations are.
So we can't just divide any property we want. Are there any common issues that could prevent us from splitting a title?
Yeah, there are a couple of things to watch out for.
Okay.
One is covenants. That's where there's some kind of restriction on how you can use the land.
Okay.
And that might include saying you can't subdivide the property.
So it's like a rule in the property deeds
Exactly.
that says you can do this, but you can't do that.
Yeah. And the other thing is easements,
Okay.
which is where somebody else has a legal right to use part of your property.
Okay.
Like if your neighbor has a right of way over your driveway, it could make it complicated to split the title.
So essentially we need to make sure there's nothing in the legal document
Yeah.
that's going to prevent us from being able to split the property.
Exactly. And then obviously if you've got a mortgage, you're going to need your lender's permission
Right, of course, yeah.
before you do anything.
Because they've got a vested interest in the property too. So they want to make sure that what you're doing is, in everyone's best interest. So let's say we've done all our checks and we're in the clear, legally speaking.
Mm-hmm.
What's the process of actually splitting the title? Is it complicated?
It's a bit of a process, but it's not too bad. The land registry has a pretty clear system for handling it.
Okay, so what are the main steps we need to take?
Well, you have to submit an application to the land registry
Right.
and include all the necessary documentation.
Okay.
So things like a detailed plan showing exactly how you're going to split the property.
So like a map showing
Yeah.
the boundary lines for each new property.
Yeah. And then you need a legal document called a transfer of part deed,
Okay.
which basically transfers the ownership of the new sections of the property.
Okay, so that's the legal bit.
Yeah.
That makes it all official.
Yeah, and then there's an application form that you need to fill out.
Right, I imagine that's got all the details about the property and who owns what and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly. Oh, and you have to pay a fee to the land registry, too.
Of course, yeah.
That depends on how much the property's worth.
Okay, so we've got all our documents together. We've paid our fee, submitted our application. What happens next?
So usually the land registry will get back to you if they've got any queries or need any more info.
Okay.
But once they're happy with everything, they'll issue new title deeds for each of the new properties.
And then we've officially split the title. That's incredible. But what happens next? What can we do with those new titles?
Well, that's where the real fun starts.
Okay.
You can sell them off individually to make a profit, or you could refinance them and free up some equity to invest in even more properties. It all comes down to your strategy, really.
Well, this is all very interesting. I'm excited to hear more. But for now, we'll let our listeners process all this info, and we'll be back in part 2 to get into the financial and strategic side of title splitting. Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. So last time we were talking all about title splitting and, how it works and why sellers don't always take advantage of it. And I think we even started to touch on some of the legal stuff involved.
We did. We talked about planning permission, covenants, easements, all those things you got to check before you even think about splitting a title.
Right. Yeah. And the process of applying to the land registry and all that. But there's one thing we didn't get to, and it's a pretty big one, and that's taxes.
Ah, yeah. Taxes. Can't forget about those.
We can't. So let's talk about the tax implications of title splitting. What do we need to be aware of?
Well, the main ones that come up are capital gains tax, which is CGT.
Right.
And then stamp duty land tax, which is SDLT or LTT in Wales.
Okay, CGT. That's basically a tax on profit, isn't it?
That's right.
But how does it work in the context of title splitting?
So say you buy a property for £400,000 and you split it into 2 units, and then sell each of those units for £300,000.
Okay.
So you've made a profit of £200,000. That profit is what CGT is calculated on.
So it's not about the total value of the property after you've split it.
No.
It's the difference between what you originally paid and what you sell the individual units for.
Exactly. And there are quite a few ways you can reduce your CGT liability.
Okay.
There are various allowances and reliefs you can claim.
I love hearing that. Always looking for ways to save on tax.
Yeah.
Okay, what about SDLT or LTT? How does that work with title splitting?
So SDLT is the tax you pay when you buy a property or land that's over a certain value, and basically you have to pay it on each individual title that you create.
So if we take that example again where we split the property into 2 and we sell both of those units, we're going to be paying SDLT on both of those sales.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. Is there anything we can do to kind of minimize that?
Well, the rates and the thresholds for SDLT change quite often.
Right.
So you need to make sure you're up to date on the latest rules. But generally, if you're buying a property specifically to split the title and then selling those units quite quickly after, you can structure the purchase in a way that reduces your SDLT liability.
Okay, so that's something to think about. So we've talked about the tax side of things. What other challenges or potential issues do we need to keep in mind with title splitting?
Well, one thing to think about is the responsibilities you'll have as a freeholder if you decide to sell the units as leaseholds.
Right, because when you sell a property as leasehold, you become the landlord, essentially.
Right. That's right.
And that comes with a whole set of legal obligations.
Exactly. You have to manage things like common areas. You're responsible for repairs and maintenance. Making sure the property's safe. You have to comply with all regulations.
Right. So it's not all passive income and sunshine. There's real work involved in being a freeholder.
Yeah. And there's always the potential for disputes with leaseholders. So you have to be prepared for that. They have rights. So you need to make sure you respect those rights and be responsive to any concerns that they might have.
Okay, so it's all about communication and transparency.
Definitely.
And making sure everybody's on the same page. What about the financing side of things? Let's say I've found a perfect property to split, but I need a mortgage to buy it. Are lenders generally happy to finance this kind of thing?
Yeah, most lenders are fine with title splitting as long as it's all done properly and above board.
Right.
They will want to see all the paperwork, like the new title deeds, the plans and everything, just to make sure it's all legit.
So they're doing their due diligence to protect their investment.
Exactly. And they might have certain requirements about the lease terms if you're going to be selling leasehold properties.
Yeah.
They want to be sure those leases are watertight.
Right.
And that their interests are protected.
So it's always best to talk to your lender early on.
Yeah, definitely.
Make sure they're happy with everything and avoid any nasty surprises later down the line.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've covered the legal side, the tax implications, being a freeholder, dealing with lenders. There's one scenario I'm wondering about. What happens if we buy a property that already has tenants in it, and then we want to split the title?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because, the tenants have rights.
Yeah.
We can't just start carving up their home without considering them.
No, absolutely.
So how do we handle that situation?
Well, communication is really important. You need to be upfront with the tenants.
Yeah.
Explain what you're planning to do and how it might affect them. Like, will their rent change? Will they still have access to the same amenities?
Right. Yeah.
And if you're planning on doing any renovations, you need to think about how that's going to impact them.
Yeah. We need to be considerate and keep them informed throughout the process.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, they're the ones who are going to be living in those units, so their well-being should be a top priority.
Okay, so far we've talked about splitting titles for houses and apartments, but there's another type of title splitting that people get really excited about, and that's land. So tell me about that. How does land title splitting work?
Well, say you have a big plot of land. Instead of selling it all in one go, you divide it up into smaller parcels and create a separate title for each one.
Right. So we're basically slicing up the land into bite-sized pieces.
That's it.
And I'm guessing each of those pieces could potentially be worth more than if we just sold the land as a whole.
Yeah, that's the idea, especially if those smaller plots can be developed,
Okay, but I'm guessing it's not quite as simple as just drawing some lines on a map, right? What are the steps involved?
Well, the first thing is to make sure you're actually allowed to split the land. Are there any covenants or restrictions that prevent subdivision?
Yeah, we don't want any legal disputes later on about who owns what and where the boundaries are.
No. So once you've checked that you're good to go, you need to get a detailed survey done. That'll help you come up with a plan that shows exactly how you're going to divide the land, and it'll flag up any potential issues like access points or utility lines.
Right. So it's like mapping out the whole area and making sure each of those new plots is accessible and viable.
Exactly. And then you need to get planning permission from the local authority.
Okay. I have a feeling this is where things get a bit tricky.
Yeah, it can be.
Because they're going to be looking at our proposal, making sure it fits with the zoning regulations, checking the environmental impact.
Yeah.
All that kind of stuff.
That's right. So you can't just go chopping up the land however you want.
Right.
There are rules and regulations you have to follow.
And I imagine you might get pushback from the community or environmental groups.
Yeah, sometimes.
Because land development can be a sensitive issue, can it?
It can, yeah.
Okay, so this is sounding a bit more complex than just splitting the title for a house.
Yeah, it can be a bit more involved.
But I'm guessing the rewards could be even greater.
Oh, definitely.
Talk to me about the numbers. Give me an example that will make my eyes light up.
All right, imagine you buy a large piece of land for £500,000.
Okay.
You get planning permission and split it into 5 smaller plots that are each big enough to build a house on.
I'm with you.
Now, let's say that each of those plots, once you've put in the utilities and access roads, is worth £200,000.
Okay, so that's £1 million.
That's right. You've basically doubled your investment.
Wow.
Just by dividing up the land and getting it ready for development.
But I'm guessing there are costs involved in that process as well, right?
Oh, yeah, of course. You've got things like the survey, the planning application fees, legal fees, and then the cost of getting the land ready, putting in utilities, access roads, all of that.
Yeah, all of that can add up pretty quickly.
It can, but even when you factor those costs in, the profit from land title splitting is often way higher than just selling the whole piece of land in one go.
Okay, this is why people get so excited about land. What about financing, though? Are lenders happy to get involved in these kinds of projects?
Yeah, you can actually find specialist lenders who focus on land development, including title splitting, so they're out there.
But they're going to want to see a pretty solid plan, aren't they?
Oh, for sure.
Before they lend us any money.
Yeah, they need to be confident that there's a market for the type of development you're proposing. They need to know that those smaller plots are actually going to sell.
Right, so it's not just about dividing up the land, it's about understanding what people want.
Yeah.
what they're going to buy, making sure there's a demand for it.
Exactly.
They're also going to want to see our exit strategy, right?
Oh, definitely. They need to know how you're going to sell those plots, whether you're going to sell them individually to homeowners or maybe sell the whole lot to a developer.
Okay. And I'm guessing they're going to want to see a healthy profit margin in there as well.
Oh, absolutely. At the end of the day, they're in the business of making money, so they need to know your project's going to be profitable.
Okay, so we've covered the basics of land title splitting, the potential profits, the costs, financing. What else do we need to think about?
Well, one really important thing is the environmental side of things.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we can't just go bulldozing through nature without considering the impact.
What are some of the environmental factors we need to keep in mind?
Well, you're going to need to assess the environmental impact of your project.
Right.
And that might involve doing ecological surveys to see if there are any protected species or habitats in the area you're planning to develop.
So it's about being a responsible developer and protecting the environment.
Exactly. And you might have to incorporate environmental mitigation measures into your plans.
Okay.
Things like creating wildlife corridors or planting trees.
Right. Finding that balance between development and conservation.
Exactly. And you need to make sure you comply with all the environmental regulations, which can vary depending on the area and what you're planning to do. So it's really important to do your research.
Okay, I think we've really covered a lot of ground today.
Yeah.
Learned so much about land title splitting, the legal side, the financial potential, the environmental considerations.
Yeah, I think this is a good starting point for anyone who's interested in exploring this strategy.
But we're not done yet.
No, we're not.
In the final part of this deep dive, we're going to shift our focus to you, our listener, and we'll talk about how you can actually apply all of this knowledge, whether you're a seasoned investor or just starting out.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. So we've covered a lot of ground with title splitting, haven't we? We've talked about the legal side of things, the tax implications, all the ins and outs.
Yeah, we've really gone deep.
And then last time we were looking at land title splitting and the incredible profit potential there.
Huge potential.
But now let's shift the focus to you, our listener.
Right.
Because at the end of the day, this information is only useful if you can actually use it.
Right, exactly.
So how can our listeners figure out if title splitting is right for them? Where do they even start?
Well, I think the first thing to consider is your financial situation.
Okay.
You know, title splitting often requires quite a bit of upfront capital.
Yeah.
Whether you're buying the property outright or getting a mortgage.
We're not talking about small change here. This is for investors who, are playing it at a different level.
Yeah, absolutely. So you need to think about your own comfort level with risk. And also, what are your financial goals? Are you looking to make a quick profit by flipping those split titles? Or are you more interested in building up a portfolio and generating long-term rental income?
It's really going to shape your approach, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Whether you're going for a quick flip or a long-term investment strategy. And I guess the other thing to consider is your level of experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you understand the property market? Do you have experience navigating legal and financial stuff? Because title splitting isn't exactly straightforward. It requires a bit of knowledge and the willingness to do your research.
Exactly.
So if you're brand new to property investment, it might be better to start with something smaller, less complicated.
That's a good idea.
Get comfortable with the basics, and then you can level up. But let's say I'm ready, I'm feeling confident, I want to jump into a title splitting project. Where do I start?
Well, like with any investment, knowledge is key.
Okay.
Spend time learning about property, reading books, going to seminars, talking to other investors.
Yeah, immerse yourself in it.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can really understand how the market works.
That's it. And then as you're doing that, you can start to look at your local market.
Okay.
See which areas have high rental demand, which areas have potential for development.
Because at the end of the day, it all comes down to location, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Those individual units that you create need to be in a desirable area. Whether people want to live there or run a business from there, you need to be confident that you can sell them or rent them out for a profit.
Exactly.
So once you've done your research, found some promising areas, then it's time to start looking for properties.
That's it.
Where's the best place to find these properties?
It's a mixture, really. Online portals, local estate agents, auctions. You can even find off-market deals.
Off-market deals, what are those?
Well, they're properties that haven't been publicly listed yet.
Okay.
So you might hear about them through networking, word of mouth, that kind of thing.
You've got to have your ear to the ground to find those off-market deals.
Definitely.
And I'm guessing we're looking for properties with, multiple units or large plots of land that we could subdivide.
Yeah.
Properties with that title splitting potential.
That's it. But it's really important to do your due diligence.
What do you mean by due diligence?
So you found a property that you're interested in. You don't want to just jump in and buy it straight away.
Okay.
You need to have it valued, get a survey, have your solicitor check all the legal documents.
Yeah, make sure there are no hidden problems, no nasty surprises.
Yeah, that's right. You don't want to end up with a property that's got structural issues or some legal restriction that prevents you from splitting the title.
Okay, so due diligence is crucial.
Yeah, it's your protection.
It's our insurance policy.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've done our research, we've found a property, we've done our due diligence, and everything looks good. What next?
Then it's time to build your team.
Okay, our dream team.
Yeah, so first up, you're going to need a good solicitor.
Right.
Someone who specializes in property law. They're going to make sure all the paperwork's correct, that the titles are split properly, that you're complying with all the regulations.
Yeah, we've talked about how important the legal side is.
Yeah, it's crucial.
So having a good solicitor on board is essential.
Definitely. And then you'll need a surveyor as well to draw up the plans for the land registry.
Right.
You might also need an architect or a builder, depending on the project.
So we're bringing in experts to help us with every stage.
That's it.
And of course, we need to talk to our lender, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Make sure the financing is all sorted.
Yeah, you want to make sure you've got the funds you need for the purchase and any renovations you're planning to do.
Okay, so final question then. What's the one piece of advice you would give to someone who's considering title splitting?
I'd say the most important thing is to never stop learning.
Okay.
The property market changes all the time.
Yeah, it's a fast-moving beast, isn't it?
It is. Regulations change, trends shift, new challenges pop up.
So you need to stay up to date.
Exactly. So keep learning, go to industry events, talk to other investors, read books, listen to podcasts.
Never stop learning. I love that.
Yeah, the more you know, the better equipped you'll be to make the most of this strategy.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and expertise with us today.
No problem. It's been a pleasure.
It's been fascinating. And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into title splitting.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
We hope you've enjoyed it, learned something new, and most importantly, that you feel inspired to take action.
That's it.
Use this information to create your own success stories in the property market. Until next time.